Well, good evening, everybody. This is the City of Bonnie Lake City Council Workshop for September 9th, 2022. I got to say, it is good to be back. I hadn't sat here in the last couple of weeks. Why don't we start out by saluting our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Mayor McCullough.
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Raising her hand.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Fullerton.
Here.
Councilmember McClyman.
Present.
Councilmember Swatman.
Present.
And Councilmember Watson.
Here.
I believe this is the first time we've had a full meeting with everybody here in probably the last 6 weeks or so. So that's interesting. And before we start, I want to thank everybody for showing up to the to Allen York Park last Wednesday to salute our Little League, who made it all the way to to Pennsylvania. That was a good show, and kudos to David Wells for putting that together. I know he had help. I forget Madam Clerk who helped him with that, but
Yeah, that's great.
everybody. Huh? Okay, so now we go on to council open discussion. Can we start? Deputy Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple things. Number one is I think this is the second time we've had a PDR in a request for council tax and all that kind of stuff. Previously, we had one, and I'm considering what it would be like, I guess, for council to have their own phones so that we don't have to continue to go through these things and get this information. I asked Chuck at the last finance meeting if it would cost very much for that to happen for council to get their own phones for the city, because obviously I don't want to cost the city a bunch of money over nothing, essentially. It sounds like it would be pretty minimal in cost to do that. Also, the last thing I want to do is carry 3 phones.
No, I am.
However, I also don't like spending my time going through and taking pictures of text to send it off as well. So I'm kind of for that. I don't know what the rest of the council thinks about that, but I thought I'd throw that out there for discussion. If anybody has any thoughts.
Any discussion? Councilmember Baldwin.
Okay, I'm just seeing black, but I'm assuming you all can hear me and see me then.
Yes.
Okay, yes. I am also in favor for this. I think it has been pretty difficult for me to attempt to communicate with citizens through the Avaya workplace through my cell phone. And so a lot of times I get phone calls and I'm not able to get to those phone calls because they're not easily identifiable. And I've had a hard time accessing the voicemail also. And so I was hoping that there was an opportunity where I can strictly do everything government related just on one phone that is made for that, so that citizens can contact me and call me directly to a line. And I know that when I receive phone calls on this line, that this is city business that I'm going to be doing and talking with citizens. And so that's my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, I second that, or third it, I guess. But it has been difficult whenever you get the email that we're having a PDR all of a sudden, and it's like, okay, so let's go back through everything for the last 6 months, because I haven't been here that long, but I can't imagine the nightmare of what it would be if I'd been here longer. Plus, yes, it would be nice to be able to know that if anybody's calling that line, that it would be specifically for the city, and I could go ahead and answer an unknown call and they wouldn't have to necessarily leave a message for me to call back.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McClyman, saw your hand.
Yeah, I appreciate the turmoil that causes, but I don't know if I'm really think that it's a good financial move, right? I think that a better financial move would probably be to supply an app to council to go grab the SMS file off the phone and submit it. I tried using some of the freeware and I didn't like it. So I was a little leery of it, but I think that would be a cheaper solution rather than giving somebody a phone. I would love a phone, and I'm planning on getting a phone myself, whether the city provides it or not. Because, yeah, I hate 3 phones, but I really just want to be able to say, "Here's my phone," right? Not have to pull through it.
Oh, that is-
But even if I handed the phone, that means somebody would have to go through it, and we're paying somebody's time at that point, right? So these. Yeah. Well, no. If I handed you my phone and you did it, there'd be no personal. The whole point is there's no personal on there, right? That's what this device is. If somebody wanted to see all my correspondence, I'd just turn that device over, right? That was a tactical error on my part. I bought this instead of a phone.
Right.
Yeah.
The one thing, and I don't have any problem whatsoever with a council member that wants a phone, from the city or what have you. It makes a lot of sense if they want to do that. But you touched on one of the parts that's going to be accurate. Somebody is going to have to go through those requests and validate them for being responsive to the particular request, no matter what it is. If you have the personal phone, you can't just you could, it's a city phone, you hand it to whoever, and then it's their job to go through those. I'm going to be in the ballpark of, no, I'm not going to give it to somebody else to go through those, because there's a lot of confidential and different information that may have come to me that's not responsive to a public records request, that I'm going to have to go through and supply the responsive requests to the city, because you're going to get unsolicited messages from constituents and other parties that may be confidential that you don't want city workers to be exposed to. So, that's just, again, my personal preference is to, have my own device that's mine that I can supply, text or whatever, or emails that are responsive, and I go with that. But again, I don't have any problem with whatsoever if a council member says, "Hey, I need a phone." Why not? They're really super cheap, and it's the city's phone. I don't think it changes that, issue. I don't want people to believe that they're going to have this magical device that they're just going to be able to turn over every 5 minutes. It's not going to have something on there. You're going to be like, "Hey, wait a minute." Staff shouldn't see that. It's not responsive to that particular request.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Carter.
No, that's all right. So on city phones, and Chuck can correct me if I'm wrong here, there's currently an app on a city phone that you get all that information essentially anyway, right? SMS type stuff.
It's not actually an app. We have a tie-in with Verizon to our archive, which is Smarsh, the company out of Portland. And so anything that goes as a text through any of our phones at the Verizon level is archived. So it's not reliant on it actually hitting that cell phone and that cell phone doing something. It's at the carrier level that we archive.
Okay. And you get emails when we send an email through a city email.
The same thing. As soon as that email hits our exchange, which happens to be in the cloud,
right,
it's archived at that point as well.
Okay. And then you can put in a search parameters, grab whatever you need for whatever PDRs are available or whatnot.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Second time I've heard this, but please explain what an SMS is. All I know is that I think it's through Google or Facebook. I don't know.
An SMS is a text.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Fullerton.
So is it possible to get an app for our personal phone then that would be for the city that so that you'd be able to calculate any of the text messages that went through the app with other council members and city workers or whatnot, so that that could be archived also through the app, so we wouldn't have to get a phone, or?
The way that we're using Smarsh, the phones have to be part of the city's plan
Okay.
to have, and it's every text is archived. It's not I want this one, I don't want that one. It is everything sent or received to that line is archived. So that's how we are doing all of our city phones. Could the city pay for an app for your personal? That wouldn't be a question directly for me. That would be more of a question for the executive.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Clemens?
Well, that was the question is it more cost effective to buy an app than it is to buy a phone? But I have no idea how much a phone is with the city, so.
I mean, maybe $50 for an Android phone. The service is about $35 to $45 a month, and then archiving is another $10 on top of that. So you're looking at less than $50 a month to have a city issued cell phone. 50, 55, somewhere around there.
Councilmember Watson?
I don't want another phone. I don't want the hassle carrying around. I don't have a purse put in or someplace special in my shop all the time. I want to be able to talk to citizens when they call me, no matter what. I used an app the first time, and City knows it gave everything. It was very simple to do. I got on my computer, synced my phone with my computer, downloaded them all, and she got them all there, and it was no big deal. I don't know what the problem is here. I don't want another phone. And if you authorize, I'm not going to take it. I don't see any point in that. We need to find how we can work through these issues. If you want to buy an app for the council person, we have a budget to do that with. All you have to decide to do as a council and say, okay, let's find a good app that Chuck might say is the best one to use, and we go buy it. I mean, we can do that. So, problem solved.
Councilmember Evans?
I spoke with Chuck about this last time at the finance when it was brought up, but Verizon does have an eSIM or a dual SIM where you can have two phone numbers on one phone as well. I don't know if that's something that would be worth looking into further, but that way you can have a city line and a personal line all on the same device where they are kind of firewalled from each other or partitioned like a separate hard drive. But I'm with Tom. I don't want another phone.
Okay. So we have talked about it.
Does Chuck have an app we could buy? That makes sense?
I'm sure there's tons of apps. I don't necessarily know.
We don't have to make a decision on this immediately. I just wanted to bring this up for discussion and see where council stood on it and whatnot. So personally, I don't want to have a city app on my personal phone. So that's kind of
Works for if it works for you, carry three phones, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
like whatever. It's like any other tool. If that works. So.
Going through the metal detectors at the court, three things is just no fun at all.
Linda Lear,
Yeah.
one of those hacker movies from the 90s.
We haven't had a problem. This is only twice in the 10 years I've been in the council we've had this come up, which is, in my opinion, highly unusual. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but
twice.
it could happen and cause more problems, but this seems like a rare case. So.
Okay, we could probably contact Chuck on this and, tell him what each individual council member wants, and we can probably accommodate that in how that works. So we'll see. All right. Any further open discussion? Do we have any other issues? Councilmember Watson.
Well, I don't have any issues. I want to talk about what's been going on in my life last few weeks and stuff.
Nice.
In the city. So fortunately, I've got several things to cover here, so hang on for a few minutes, please. Had a great time on August 27th. Went on a ride along with Officer Graham on that night from 8 until 1 o'clock in the morning. We were busy the whole night, and we went back to the station one time at a break and took back out again. It was a great discussion with the officers and all of them, how they work together. I really was impressed how well they communicate. good to talk about the body cams they have and what they're doing about them, how helpful they are for them. Those are things I didn't know as a council person, but they're able to go back through those, look them over, see what they did do wrong, and also write reports. I'm not sure if it's correct to do that, but they'll go back through their body cam and see what they actually encountered to put in the reports that way. So it's very factual. They have a question in their mind what happened. We toured.
Before we go on, Councilmember Watson, what you said you were busy from 8 to 1. What type of calls did you?
I'm about to tell you that.
Oh, right on.
Thank you. First of all, we had a call from one of the businesses in town that the ladies were getting harassed and they left work at night. And that happened to be behind Hop and Dops over there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a homeless camp out there, which I'd heard about, but never have seen it. And so the officer Graham went to them and talked to the Hop and Dops about what's going on, talked to the person who was getting counted a couple times, I think at least twice anyway. And then we went out to the camp that he knew who was out there. And there is one big tent back there, and we couldn't raise anyone. It was zippered from the inside, so we couldn't open it up. They were talking, they're going to do a follow-up on that. After that, they talked to some people in the parking lot, and he came back in later, talked to them what we did, and reassured them to come back. Anything else that was going on, he'd follow up on it that night. There was a gas tank in the parking lot in front of the theater was drilled. I'm shocked that with all of this is going on there and that bar in town right there, right in the middle of the parking lot, someone underneath there and drilled that gas tank. And we came back. The fire department already left, but there was a white container where they drilled it and got the gas out. And the person he called on the phone says there was like no gas in the tank. He says, I had to get gas that night. So he had to get it towed the next morning and then get that repaired. So very costly. And I don't think there's any cameras to be able to pick up on those that night too. There was two people, cousins that were fighting. There's one guy has a mobile home he lives in up someplace in the woods over here in this part of town, on the south part of town. And his two cousins, boys, were there fighting outside. One wanted to go home in Issaquah, which he was too drunk to go up there. And the other guy was trying to get him out of there. And so the owner of the trailer said, that's what he called the police. Said, they're fighting out here. I need something about them. So we went out there and talked to them both, calmed them both down. They assured us they were going to stay there in their vehicles and sleep it off that night and calm down the next day. So they did a great job there. We had a small fire going on. We heard the fire trucks go on. So I used my app, tells them what the fire truck was doing, and said, this is where you need to go to. It wasn't on the police. And he called in to find out, went to one of the houses over in Cedarview. Yeah. And there was a fire in the front yard, very small one, but they had plenty of personnel there. And we discussed where the police should be when the fire trucks all were showing up so they can get those big engines in there and move around stuff. Have to stay back, but see if they can help. So that was interesting walking that. We had a car that we're trying to find that we knew was had a report of going down Locust over 50 miles an hour. It blew through the four-way stop on Locust Mike Boulevard. And we heard someone was dropped off in the street. I communication to 911, and they're very good about communicating to what's happening. We were able to tell where the car had gone to, but she went in the house and would not come out. And the officer couldn't get him out and stuff. He tried numerous times. She would not go out. I'm going to call my attorney. You have to leave my property, all that kind of good stuff. What I did find out, mention about the 911, is that the dispatchers are helping them find locations out there when they're going to a site. I didn't realize they could tell where the cars are, where they're going to. And you need to look for this turn up here, go to the right there. We're here in this. They're walking that officer through what's going on, what to look out for, and be aware of it. So the communication that they have is great. This one dispatcher has stopped by the PD a few times, talked to officers to it's good to have that relationship, be able to work with them, what's happening and stuff. And as you know, when a call's going on, you only have 2 or 3 officers on duty. They're showing up to back up the other officers there. So each one of the calls, they're seeing how it's going, need some more help and support. We have a homeless person going down Mike Boulevard, wandering across the streets on there, and they stopped, talked to him. They know him, and they tried to get him to treatment. But we couldn't take him in that night because he was actually on some type of medication. We called Puyallup, and they would not take him since he's taking the medications. They'd let him go and be careful that night. Not much they could do with him that night.
On that issue, Councilmember Watson, I did want to address the chief on a couple things. I got a letter from a Yakima today saying that they are discontinuing their housing services
Wow.
for probably everybody, which really struck me as that was a real cash cow for them.
That's our big.
Understand. So
Yeah.
that's really something. Have we been having still the same issues on being able to book anybody, or how's that going?
Yes, it's still difficult to book people for misdemeanor crimes. Certain felony crimes, it's easier, but still struggling with the misdemeanor if they're full or if they're on medications or they have the sniffles or something, they're not taking them at all. So there's another entity, I think it's Wapato in Eastern Washington, that has a similar program since. We'll have to look into that. I know that we have not been able to book very much in Yakima since COVID, so it doesn't actually surprise me that they discontinued that. So we'll definitely have to look into other long-term options because it's definitely cheaper to send them over there than it is anywhere on the west side. And if you can find somebody for a long-term commit, that's just it. The local jails aren't willing to fill up their bed space unless it's SCORE at close to $300 a night. They'd be willing to take our long-term commits, but
I imagine.
yeah, I just it's a lot of money. I mean, these people need to be held accountable, but we do have to be mindful of the budget.
No, that and the body worn videos. Any issues with that, or has it been?
No, it's going very good. We've had some bugs with the cameras, but Axon has been pretty good about addressing those. And I know that Assistant Chief Boyle has sent a few of them back, but they're pretty quick on turning them around and getting us the equipment and helping us out with that. So it has been so far very good.
That's good. No offense, Councilmember Watson.
But
I
you're
just
hijacking
wanted to
my-
ask
my-
he'd be deemed an expert.
Thank you. I'm not quite done with this part of it anyway.
Okay.
We also went down to Allen York Park. There's two vehicles down there, two in the parking lot. One guy was down there drinking after hours. We asked him to go home or call for a ride. He said he was going to, so he was still there and we left. We also had 4 people on the boat at the fish dock out there, the jump in the concrete one. They were out there drinking. We told them they shouldn't be at the middle of the night like that. It was after 10 o'clock or something, whatever it was. No, the boat, the concrete
okay.
fishing area there.
Do you know their ages? Were they over 21? Do they look under 21?
They're probably over 21. I stayed by the life vest and stuff, you know.
Okay.
And I didn't go on to the ramp out there with them, but they all said they wouldn't drive and leave their vehicles there and be very careful. So we also had a vehicle that we hit the lights on in front of Target. The tabs were expired, couldn't read the plates. Hit the lights on there, and he just kept on going. And surprisingly, pull over sooner. And we were thinking that guy's going to run on us. Got to the top of the hill here, and then up top of the hill, he pulled over here and pulled into Kendrick here behind you here. And very nice gentleman, went through it all. His girlfriend's car. He would talk about it, and it was all registration. You know, it was all there and stuff that was good for us. So, you know, yes, all the officers were very helpful when I asked questions. Very supportive of each other, and it was a great night out there and stuff. It always is when I go. About every year I go for a ride along. So if any council members haven't done that yet, you should do it. It's very helpful. We have a lot of decisions coming forward to us as council members, and I think to know what they're going through, what's going on, is good for you too. And I have a video to show you now on a whole nother subject.
Thank you, Councilmember.
You're welcome. Chief Gear and myself had the honor of attending the Sun Valley Lake School District Convocation on the 29th. If you ever get a chance next year in the future to attend that, it's very well worth attending. The entire staff is there in attendance for their bus drivers, custodial, everyone's there. It's really good to hear what their plans are, what's been going on, and what they're doing in the future. It makes you really, along with them, getting pumped up for the new school year coming forward. Lori Dent, superintendent, talked about having zero kids not graduate. We had about 35 last year that didn't graduate. Her goal this year is to get that down to zero. And it was a great celebration, had a good time. Chief had a good time there, and it was really impressive. On September 1st, I also attended the Communities for Families meeting. As you know, I go every month. Lori Dent was a speaker at that meeting. Marilee Hill gave you these, so that we have received that meeting about starting school. And Lori Dent discussed the new strategic plan and promise. Their promise is we will support, know, value, and support every student, helping them to graduate to pursue a promising future. I received a text from Marilee this afternoon, and she said, if you could share the Family Center and many other local partners distributed 1,586 backpacks, 591 swag bags that you have here between 4 large events, Liberty Ridge, Lake Ridge, Daffodil, and the Family Center at Sumner Middle School. Your help from the city always makes it possible. And also we talked about the youth forums coming up. Those are so wonderful. It's kind of like going along with the PD. You talk to the students, what's going on, you get their thoughts. You ask them questions, they give you feedback. That's how I found about how many things going on at Allen York Park years ago from middle school. This year she needs help at the high school. So if you have time at all when she comes forward, and I'll let you know about those youth forums, that would be great for one of you to attend that, because I will be doing it this year myself. So to be in touch with the school district, what they're facing, gives us an opportunity to think about where we're making the right decisions for the city and our citizens in Bonnie Lake.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And one last comment is real quick. Don't forget, Beautify Bonnie Lake is on the 17th. We have a proclamation next week. I think the mayor will be reading for you. Hope you can at least come by and say hi. If you all can't work and help out.
In fact, I need to talk with you about, there's an issue since you're co-chair on that committee. I'd like to talk with you after our meeting.
Got it.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
And I much regret missing that convocation. I tried very hard to get over there, but I just couldn't do it. And it looks like I missed a very nice celebration.
That was very good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Do we have for open discussion? Okay, let's move on then. Seeing no other open discussion, we now have the review of council minutes. Councilmember Watson, do you want to talk again, or should I go with
I think
Councilmember
we had
Fullerton
one
this time?
minor corrections. That's about all.
Okay.
You were good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Now we have a discussion action item. Madam Clerk.
This is AB 22-133, Resolution 3085. The council motion would be to discuss and authorize Judge Joanna Daniels to attend the Drug Driving Essentials for the Judiciary in Reno, Nevada, September 12th through the 14th of 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? Okay. Yeah, Councilmember McClymons.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for the judge, and it's a good sign that she had the opportunity to attend. I do. It's always difficult to take action during a workshop, right? So if there's any way we can avoid that, in the future, that would be preferable. That's all I have.
It does have the citizen comment after that for this specific action item.
Okay. And that brings up a question, Chief Jeter, do we have a drug recognition expert on our force?
We do.
Okay. How many? Just,
We have one that's currently certified.
okay, good. Okay. Well, now we do move on to citizen comments. This is your time to address the council regarding this resolution only. You will have 5 minutes. When you come to the lectern, please state your name and address for the record, please. I believe that is long enough, so let's take it to a vote. All in favor on this resolution allowing Judge Daniels to go to this drug driving impairment in Reno, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. Bring your sunscreen, Judge Daniels. Okay, next we have a discussion on the Allen York long-term plan. Councilmember Baldwin, the floor is yours. If, oh, there we go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on a different device, so and I can see all your beautiful faces. Yeah, I wanted to bring this up here at a council meeting because we have just gone rounds and rounds and rounds in public safety in regards to just what's going on at Allen York. And I feel like a lot of the solutions that we're coming up with are just Band-Aid approaches. And so I did talk with Chief Jeter and also just some regular citizens that do attend that have worked in government and also are a part of some voting boards and things like that.
You froze.
You're so still.
That's a good picture, though, don't you think?
Yeah,
Usually,
very
when
nice.
you're frozen, it's in
Very
that.
good. It's just some weird, like, yeah. Probably trying to find another device. Does anybody know the context of her comments? I
I'm
don't.
calling her right now.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
well, she's on. It's her phone up.
Hi.
Hey, you froze on
How are
us,
you?
so I got you on speaker and I got you on the microphone, so go ahead.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so yeah, we have been talking to citizens that have been coming in regularly that have worked in government and also are on some voting boards just here locally. And so just asking what they feel like are some things that we can do instead of just these Band-Aid approaches to fix things year after year after year. And so I know we've been talking about some potential solutions, but just none of it is on paper. And so I don't want the government to take longer in trying to figure out what to do to solve this problem. And so the thought process was maybe hiring a consultant, one that could then report back and just talk to us about some long-term ways to fix Allen York so that we don't continue to just Band-Aid the park. And so that was what I wanted to kind of have a discussion about. I was even thinking if there's an opportunity that we can do this before the budget and things like that. And so I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were. This has been a very frustrating conversation at public safety every time it gets brought up. And citizens are frustrated that we just there's no long-term plan with it. And so just wanted to get your take, everybody's take on it.
Okay, open floor, Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Councilmember Baldwin, you had a conversation with Police Chief Jeter on a consultant that could help. Basically, their master plan the consultant is an expert on building parks and making them so that they're usable. I'm trying to figure out how to word my brain isn't working right now. Is that correct, Chief? Like it's somebody who's an expert in actually designing parks, and specifically it could be one that is for water and baseball fields and everything else that we would need for Allen York Park, and just come up with one awesome plan that was done by an expert who only deals in parks.
That's correct. And that way they could take a look at the current situation and could make suggestions for improvements that could be made, or ways that we could mitigate traffic, things like that. That's what they do. Ryan and I, well, speaking for Ryan, he's a pretty smart guy, but that's not his background. It's certainly not my background. So if we had somebody who it is their background to kind of guide us in that discussion, and then you all as a council could decide what are the priorities, what makes sense to you to help make decisions on any improvements, if any, at Allen York Park to make it more enjoyable for our citizens, more accessible, help with the traffic, help with the parking and things like that. That's
About the safety and security, Chief.
yeah, that would be a part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if we have somebody that can actually design the roadways and make it work, because this is actually what he does as an expert, then that's actually going to make it more safe as well, because you're going to be dealing with the roads, the parking, the parks, handling the citizens, the amount of traffic that we get at the park during the summer. He would have all of that information down and be able to make a master plan for that park specifically that would make it more safe, more enjoyable for the citizens, and kind of a more well-rounded area in general.
One of the big things, Mayor, for me is the capacity.
Mm-hmm.
We are just kind of best guessing based on available parking spaces for capacity, where the consultant would have studies that would back up and could tell us what is adequate for capacity there. So that's another, and since we've implemented the capacity limits, it really has increased the security, and having Pierce County Security is there as well has really helped with that. So we've noticed on days when they lost count and things get out of hand, it's usually that's why. It's because we're way over capacity, which people invades their personal space, tempers get short, and conflicts arise. So that's another area that would be very important for them to look at from my perspective.
Thanks, Chief. Could we get a 2-for-1 on perhaps getting consulting on Midtown Park?
That's the council's pleasure.
Oh, yes, Councilmember McClymont.
So I wasn't here, but I believe we did have a master park plan executed. Didn't it take into account those topics?
If you'd like, I can speak to that for a moment here, Councilmember McClymans. So just a little bit of background. We are bringing forward a contract with a consultant to do the Parks, Trails, and Open Space plan that we have discussed in previous council meetings. That contract will move forward through committee on September 20th and then come back for full council approval a week later. As far as speed is concerned, as long as I know and have a good vision for what it is you want, we could add additional scope to this consultant's contract in order to and basically amend the current scope and fee they'd put together to include this work and move that forward on those dates that I just mentioned. Depending upon how deep you want to go, we can do that, or we can do an advertisement or request for proposals and select a different consultant to do that. I think that the better bang for your buck would be to amend the current contract that we're going to be pushing forward and go with that consultant that we have already retained for the overall plan. I do want to manage expectations, though, because if you're talking about actually getting into real design work, this will get expensive quickly. And right now, the budget that we have available was a combination of the funds for Midtown Park, the plan there, and for the downtown plan. So that's a combination together of about $245,000. I would think that at this point, and I would ask the question, I don't know how this work is to be funded. So there's that question. But then on top of that, what you're probably going to get, depending upon what the level of investment is going to be here, is something more akin to a preliminary analysis.
Oh, and yeah, Mr. Johnstone, what, putting the cart before the horse, would we need a consultant and a designer, or what would be why couldn't we just get a designer in who would be able to consult?
Well, Conservation Techniques, which is the consultant selected for the plan, would have all of the people in place to provide these services. So that firm would be able to provide what it is looking for, the level of involvement, investment that we want to make in putting this together.
Okay.
So just a short story. If you let me know what you want, I can put it in a scope.
Okay. We could never figure that out. Yes, Councilmember McClymonds.
So I guess the question is, if we have a plan now,
We don't.
if we pay for a new plan, what makes us think the new plan is going to be any better than the current plan? Or is going to end different? We don't have the money to do anything.
That's my thing. I mean,
Yeah.
cool, we're going to spend $300,000. Fine. We got it in the budget.
No.
We have it in the ending fund.
Oh, I'm just saying, yeah, you might approve that, but
Regardless, 300,000 is not the big issue here. It's the $13 million bill that we're going to get. And we're like, cool, we're going to shelf this for the next 15 years because we're not willing to vote on park funding or any sort of funding. So it's just going to be kicking down the road. And 15 years from now, when another council says, hey, why don't we dust off that old one? They're going to be like, well, that was 15 years ago. We're going to do this. And, it's going to be Groundhog's Day all over again.
Another council, you're shortchanging this.
I'm not going to be in 15.
Deputy Mayor, I saw you raise your hand. Sorry, Councilmember Watson, but
No, I
did you have
did-
your hand up?
no,
Okay.
I did not.
All right, Councilmember Watson.
As we discussed, we've already done this once before, and we filed it upstairs someplace and spent whatever $25,000 for it.
Mm-hmm.
We already have the basic plan put together. We also did one for Midtown Park, which is also one, as you all know, what I want to do.
Right.
We don't want to do any funding for that. But now I'm hearing some council persons say they want to put ball field stuff down there. There's no room for that. We don't want to increase the traffic down in York Park.
Mhm.
We have problems for getting the public into the lake right now, which we should address. We need to address the parking for the boats, and we have a ball field coming. Anything else, we don't have room for it down there. We need to go to Midtown Park. I'm not going to vote for $20,000 for someone to decide what we should do to increase the traffic flow down the change. We all know it's a challenge. Why would you do that now? And you're saying no to increase funding for Midtown Park. If we had something to make it all work, I would say great, because I know there's a problem. I know those two people that come to those meetings that she's talking about, and they're very concerned about what we're doing. But I'm not going to go spend $20,000 and improve Allen York Park. We're not going to even look at Midtown Park because that's where you need to move the public to. We need to move the ball fields over there. We need to move David's Concerts over there. We need to take that field that's been there forever into a parking lot for the boats and stuff to make it more reasonable, maybe a road to go around there. But we don't have the money to do improvements to ball fields and other entertainment down there.
Yeah.
Just need to fix the traffic, fix the walking into it. You're not right there by the edge of the field. If the road's coming out in through the old ballpark and going around there, you've got room to people expand and spend that money for that. But I'm not going to vote for ball fields if you don't want to do anything in Midtown Park, and we don't have money for it anyway. I don't know we have money for a consultant as it is.
Okay. So, Councilmember Baldwin, do we have you back?
I think so. I can't see you guys, but I can hear you guys. I think one of the main concerns here is in regards to the talks that we've been having in fixing boat trailer parking, for example. We keep talking about it, but really, is that something that we have essentially recorded somewhere as a plan that we're going to execute? Or is this just us talking about it, but it isn't something that's actually going to be executed unless, it's then on paper of some sort? I don't want to be telling the public that we're going to be fixing this and we're going to try to amend. I understand the Midtown Park plans, and they're wonderful. But there's problems at Allen York that they have to be remedied. And, you know, just trying to figure out what is the remedy then. We've just been going in circles with it. And so I'm trying to figure out if there is a solution that can be put in place that will be executed, and not just simple Band-Aid things.
Councilmember Evans. Thank you, Councilmember Baldwin.
Didn't we vote on something for that, Ryan? Like $30,000 for restriping or something or boat trailer parking at Allen York?
That's correct.
Yeah,
So
that's already been voted on.
that is the plan that I know of to date, is that we're going to establish the Field 4 parking lot for boat trailer parking for next season.
Yeah.
Okay.
As voted on already in the budget from the council.
Correct. The striping and the chip seal that's necessary was happening this year as part of our projects, our annual projects.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Okay, then how about the overabundance of people that are coming to the park? We've hired a security officer who's apparently supposed to be enforcing the law down there and can't because they're security forces. They're not police officers. And we're having to consistently send our officers there to take care of problems every single year.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, first of all, thank you, everyone. I feel like you guys are bringing up issues that we all know are at Allen York Park and have been for years. Unfortunately, we as a council decided to put in a field down there, right? And so we're blocked off boat trailer parking for this year. And some of this is just growing pains of this year is going to be, we're just going to have to get through it. There's not a lot of solutions down there without spending money. The way to fix this is to redo the park completely, which is what I think Chief Jeter and Councilmember Baldwin are kind of pointing towards, is that we need a solution that will actually fix the problem. I'm okay with looking at it. My issue is going to come down to the same thing Councilmember Evans constantly brings up is, you know, we don't have any money to do it. We can do the look at it, but ultimately, what are we doing? We need to come up with a solution, whether it be, you know, going to the citizens and saying, will you approve, you know, some kind of parks deal or whatever? But you're right. We're kicking it around over and over again and basically getting nowhere is kind of what I feel.
Okay, Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah. Ryan, didn't we also, we did talk about turning Ballpark 4 into a parking lot, correct?
Correct.
And that is something that we're going to be doing?
At this time, I didn't recall that any final decisions had been made on taking that action. It was an idea that was discussed, but again, I unless I misunderstood the conversation, I don't believe there was.
Forward as a decision card? I thought that was coming forward as a decision card.
I did not include it as a decision card. I certainly can prepare a decision
Yeah,
card.
we definitely need to do that.
That was my
Yeah,
plan too.
because that was part of me
She suggested.
considering closing the boat launch at some point, was because I wanted to make sure that Ballpark 4 was going to be turned into boat launch parking so that we never had to close or consider closing the launch again.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Traumatizing.
prepare a decision card. We can put that together quickly, and I can get it to just send that directly to Sherry, John. Yeah.
Well, do it by Saturday, unless there's a deadline on it. That's when we're getting together.
A lot of the preliminary work needed to establish the budget that'd be necessary for that's been done. So it's really just putting it all on one document.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion on the matter? We have a couple more items. Okay, Councilmember Clemens.
Yeah, so this is, because of OPMA, this is the time that we get to talk, right, and try to figure this out, right? So are we going to do something? Is the question. I mean, I don't want to pay, not to be, just to be perfectly clear, I think we have to solve the problem, but I don't want to pay for another plan unless the plan includes how we're going to fund it, right? And because otherwise, we're going to spend money on a plan, and by the time we have enough money, we're going to pay somebody to update the plan, right? And now all we're doing is keeping the planners in business, which isn't a bad deal.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's always something we try to do.
Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, as far as turning ballpark 4 into boat launch parking and also the parking lot into boat parking as well, because we're going to be getting the additional 120 parking spaces with the new ball field, which will be done in October, I believe, is the hopeful deadline. But that ballpark 4 was supposed to be budgeted with the ARPA funds, I believe, is what we had discussed, was being able to use those because that would be community, giving back to the community. So we should have the funding for that. But I'm not sure. I think that's what we had discussed.
I believe.
You remember?
For the original striping.
Yeah. Well, also the ballpark 4 being turned into parking. That was also something that we had discussed with the ARPA funds, I believe.
I don't recall that. I just remember that was supposed to be a 23-24 budget issue.
Okay.
That may have been a conversation we had, but
Yeah.
we have not officially allocated ARPA funds for ball field or
Okay.
conversion to parking.
But I don't think that it's out of control that we couldn't, that we don't have money budgeted for that field to be turned into parking. It's not like an out of control expenditure that would be overwhelming. Whereas building a new park at this point, we have to come up with funds for Midtown. But, you know, if we want to do a park in Midtown, we need to come up with a budget. We need to come up with where are we going to get the funds for that. But as far as fixing the boat launch parking, using Ballpark 4 parking lot and Ballpark 4 itself, that should give us hopefully an additional 80 parking spots, if not a few more, using the two areas, and that will help, and it won't be out of control, and we should already have that money in the budget without having to find money to fund that fix.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
Councilmember Swatman, I saw,
Sure.
did you have a comment on this?
No, yeah, those are all great. I appreciate the conversation because it is one of those issues that's gone round and round forever and ever and ever, right? And I don't know if it'll ever be per se solved because we are a growing community, so it's always going to be one of those things that needs to be constantly looked at. I would note though that, you know, Ballfield 4, you'll probably be able to use a lot of it for the parking, which we talked about. We definitely want to do and get that plan out there to do that. There may be some configurations that still leave a significant portion of the ball field. So just, you know, an outright conversion of it, you know, is there's a lot of room there. So how they deal with the wetlands and all that kind of stuff, it needs to be planned out. You know, they got to do that. I think they were supposed to be kind of in the process of moving that along so that we can get that done. But you're always going to have that issue of, you know, X number of boats and the ability to launch them and all those kind of, you know, it's going to be one of those things. I don't know if it's like per se solvable. It's kind of like, how do you mitigate it? Because the parking for that new ball field, I guess, is just cars, I think. So it's cars only over there. So it's not going to increase your boat field. But, you know, it's just, it's a huge discussion. I don't know. You know, it's like Councilmember McClemens points out, it's like we can plan for these things, but unless you get the whole idea of how you're going to do that, and depends on the constant, go ahead and, you know, it's a discussion, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that was my point, though, is that we actually already have turning Ballpark 4 and Ballpark 4 parking lot into boat launch parking.
Yeah.
That was always the plan,
Right.
as far as I understood it. I don't know how that got lost in the conversations, but that's what I've been telling all of the citizens, is that, you know, the plan is, in my mind, and what I understood was that we have the finances, we have the ability to go ahead and make Ballpark 4 and Ballpark 4 parking lot into boat launch parking. And that will help with the boat launch parking problem. And then we have additional car parking coming, but we already have the budget for that. We don't have to discuss Midtown and how we're going to fund Midtown. And we don't even really need to discuss how we're going to fund changes to Allen York at this point, because we do have a plan if that's the one that we're going to go with, which is what I thought was kind of where we were headed. And if we're going to continue to make safer and bigger progress with Allen York, you know, by hiring a consultant, then that's something that we do need to discuss. But I think that we're kind of all over Allen York because we're wanting to focus on Midtown at this point, right? So whatever we decide in the future for Midtown, we're going to have to come up with financing for that. But as far as Ballpark 4 being parking, I think we've got boat launch parking covered.
Okay, Councilmember Evans.
Does anyone know what the deadline is for an advisory vote on this year's election? I'd just be curious if we put a one word or one sentence thing, if the city of Bonnie Lake put forth a bond proposal next year, would you be supportive of it if it was funded by an increase in your property taxes during this recession?
Yeah. Well, especially if you could do that B&O thing out there, I'd love to get the voters to weigh in on that.
I think 60 days prior, like we are right now, I think it's a little cutting it a little.
Because right now, because I know Kelly, I'm probably with him on this. I don't want to do this in a special February thing like the school district does to try and know the voter turnout's low. And you can get $100 million quickly. But I also
for the children
want to make some movement on this.
Yeah.
And waiting until next November is going to be tough, and especially, I mean, it's an off election, off year election. So, the numbers still aren't going to be as big as if we did it 2 years from now in a presidential one where you can actually capture a bigger piece of the public.
Mm-hmm. There's just so many options, right? That you guys have talked about. You guys have talked about private development of these parks and different things. There's all kinds of issues where organizations have taken over and built their own parks and ran them and leased them out, and all of that. That's just a gigantic conversation, right? And I don't know where that happens or how that occurs.
One way we could start would be with baby steps. That would be getting the decision card in by Saturday, and we can take our first step in doing that. And I believe that would
that one
get the ball rolling.
The parking seems real straightforward. That's an obvious one. I thought we were in process.
Start with then. All right. Let's move
Kelly
on.
had a.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember.
I had a question for Chief Jeter. So is the boat ramp parking the majority of the concern, or is it access to the lake for picnickers? And
The answer is yes.
Right, exactly.
Both of them. And what I wanted to point out too is I am looking for long-term solutions. Clearly I won't be here, but what I'm looking for is to make it more enjoyable soon. I'd like to see short, mid, and long-term goals from a consulting standpoint. And I think that boat launch needs to be looked at by a professional, not by Ryan and I, who can tell you it's a traffic nightmare, because now when that was designed, it was designed for single cab pickup trucks with a 16-foot ski boat. Now you've got double quad cab, long bed, big trucks pulling 24-foot wake boats that every time they have to launch and pick up their boat, they're pulling out onto West Taps Highway and blocking traffic. Also, we can't tell you intelligently how many trailer park spots should we have. We're kind of spitballing here based on having that big field and just making it a free-for-all. How much should we be charging for launching? What is the capacity? That's a big one for us. All I know is every spring we're scrambling, and every summer we're left to deal with the impacts of the overcrowding at Allen York Park, the impacts on the neighborhood for people parking in there. We don't have no parking. Maybe the consultant could look at that and say, you need to expand these areas to no parking, or you need to have X amount of parking spots. And I know Deputy Mayor Carter and I have had this discussion. It would be nice to be like the county park and have a gate that, boom, it's closed when it's full. We don't have that option. So we need somebody to help us, lead us through that discussion. Because, I mean, here we're already seeing that we thought we had the trailer park parking for next year addressed, but it doesn't sound like it is. And what's been happening in my 4 years back is we usually start dealing with this about 2 months before boating season because it gets put on the back shelf. And I think Councilmember Baldwin and Councilmember Fullerton are trying to push this forward. So we're not going to be in that situation next year, that we are prepared and we've got something kind of to back it up, that we have somebody who is an expert in the field telling us you need X amount of boat trailer parking spots. And when those are full, that's it. Sorry, we're full. You need X amount of parking for the general public to accommodate whatever the capacity may be for that square footage of land. We don't have that expertise. We're just kind of guessing, and it would be nice to have that information to guide those discussions and put those restrictions in place. And if there's anything else that they can do to help what we have now make it more enjoyable for our citizens, because I think we're all hearing that it's not. It's certainly not enjoyable for the police department when they have to spend the majority of their shift down there towing vehicles or moving people out of the way. And I mean, it's going to be the nature of the beast. When it's hot, everybody wants to go to the lake. I understand that. It's going to be, I want that to be the exception when we have to be down there all the time instead of the rule. And if there are ways to mitigate that and we can have somebody guide us through that, that's what I'm looking for. And yes, part of that will be 10 years from now, if and when we have the money to reroute things. I think that would be the best, but honestly, that's probably not what's going to happen. So we have to look at ways to mitigate now, and the boat launch, is it still viable? And I mean, it'd be easy for me to say no, but that's not my decision. And I would be looking at it from selfish reasons of traffic safety and the impacts on my staff. We need somebody that doesn't have a dog in the fight, that can tell us, objectively, what needs to be done here to increase the safety at this park, and what we need to do is to address the parking issues and the boat launch issues and those sorts of things. I just would hope that we'd have somebody guide us through and keep us on track. 'Cause like I said, it always seems to be at the last minute we're scrambling and then we're left. I mean, thankfully that we've been able to deal with it, but I can tell you it hasn't been enjoyable, and it all seems to fall on the police department, which I understand that traffic and some of that is our stuff, but we are not parks planners. We are in the safety game, and we're trying to make sure everybody's safe. So I would just like to be prepared, and I think that's what Councilmember Baldwin and Fullerton are trying to do, is push us forward so we're ready next year when the boating season, and we have the answers for our citizens on how many spaces and how did you come up with that number and what's the capacity and how did you come up with that number. So I just want to throw it.
Mr. Johnstone, speaking of impact, did we ever get an assessment on how much damage was done when this summer when our boat launch or the area around our boat launch was run into? What are we looking at as far as fixing that? If we're looking at amending or redesigning the boat launch, you might as well put that into the.
Well, that incident aside, the docks that are currently out there need to be replaced anyways. We're already trying to keep those pieced together with just, material on hand. They're already failing and falling apart. So the boat launch is a whole issue unto itself. I mean, if you go back and look at aerial photos, what you're looking at as far as today's boat launch is nothing more than what was originally once a dirt ramp into the lake. There's never been, as far as I can tell, any real formal design. No one was ever contracted. It's just been cobbled onto, as far as I can tell, over the years. So you've got a big problem there, and it's a safety issue. We've brought that forward in the past. I just want to make sure, again, managing expectations here. The plan for boat trailer parking next year has been decided. Whether it's optimal or not is another discussion, but that the existing Field 4 parking lot will be boat trailer parking for the next season. The field project that Councilmember Fullerton brought up, was never going to happen before 2024 anyways. One, because I don't know how we're going to fund it, and two, because it was going to be part of the discussion, evidently, as part of the budget talks. So the soonest that you'll have expanded boat launch parking available to you is 2024. So there's definitely some issues there that I'm concerned about, and I still am not sure what direction I'm going as far as the consultant support that was brought up and initiated this conversation.
Okay, and let's start wrapping this up, guys. We talked about it to death, but Councilmember Evans?
Well, that's what we're here for, is to discuss it. I completely can support what Chief's saying. The cost of doing this outside of the consulting is, traffic mitigation. That's far less than moving parks and roads and adding parks here or there. So how you defined it, perfect. I can completely support that. What do we have going out for an RFP that we're going to add that other one to?
Are you talking about what we were initially talking about this evening?
Yeah.
I've just been jotting notes to myself, but it needs to be probably a little bit more specific than this if I'm going to have a conversation with a consultant about scope. But I've got security, I've got space planning and use, I've heard road realignment, beach access, boat launch access.
Yeah, that's secondary. What was the initial thing that you said you're already putting in?
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand. So this is the original overall city parks, trails, and open space plan that we discussed previously and that we move forward with sending out an RFP for.
Could you add an extension of the boat launch itself as part of that scope to look
Yeah,
at?
that's exactly what I was saying earlier. We can amend the contract that's moving forward on 920 through committee and add this additional work to that to utilize the consultant we've already interviewed and already selected to help speed this along. I just need to know a little bit more about what it is that what is it that you expect to see on there, because I want to give you a product that satisfies your requirements.
Would that be coming through CDC before?
It will on 920.
Okay.
Councilmember Baldwin, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Jeter for so eloquently just explaining more in detail what some of those issues are. And I know that we were talking about making Ball Field 4, into boat trailer parking, but I know that we had also discussed just kind of looking a little further, maybe not fully into the future, but maybe a midterm goal is just the expansion of that into some of the parking that's not Ball Field 4. And so, but it's in that general vicinity, kind of near where the old Public Works building is and things like that. And so, I don't know. I feel like I want to be able to give Ryan's a clear, moving forward goal. And I guess I'm wondering about timing too. How long take?
No, that's true. Councilmember Watson.
I would fully support what the chief brought up. Just a consultant only, because I'd heard earlier in discussion about ball fields and stuff, and I was in the wrong direction. I agree totally. That's a mess down there, and that night went wrong in the officers. We talked about that too. Right along. Just get a consultant tell us this is what we have to deal with. We can't spend money on a new ramp right now. This is how we have the people come into it. This is where our parking set up. What's the best way to manage what we have right now? And then let's get somebody later on in the future to do a bigger scope there, look or bring out what we paid for before. To have somebody use that small part to look at the traffic flow, the parking that we have there, the boat launches, the issues that you run into, Chief. I think you're the best one to cover the immediate concerns and work with Brian, the council, to do that, I would think.
Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, so the question is that the people that we have contracted with, Ryan, are they specifically parks? Because I believe what Chief Jeter had in mind was somebody who was, as a consultant, somebody who specifically does parks as a profession, has an understanding of what is needed to create a safe and effective park. So the company that we are hiring are they specifically for parks? And this is something that they can do.
The question I have is has this been put before committee yet? I mean, the discussion we're having right now seems a lot more appropriate for
gone
for the
around
committee first.
for years now.
Okay, yeah, it's okay.
This is around.
We do need to
Deputy City
figure
Attorney.
something out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As parliamentarian, I just want to point out us. Take a brief.
Mhm.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Okay, so let's turn off the.
Yeah.
This is the.
Motion to recess was on the floor, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on the matter? Okay. All in favor of a comfort recess, say aye.
Aye.
How long is it?
5 minutes.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Very good. Let's recess.
I'm surprised you stayed up till 1 o'clock.
Okay. It is
Exciting.
7:15 in the Bonnie Lake City Council workshop for September 6th. Yes, thank you. Has recommenced. So let's move on to item E, which is a discussion item. Madam Clerk, could you read it, please?
We would like to finish this discussion first.
Got it.
Oh, okay. What are we doing beyond just getting the decision card in?
We have a
for
couple
us?
people who would like to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay. Deputy Mayor Carter.
Thank you. As the other council members have said, I would be for changing the scope of that consultant. What I would ask is that the overall plan is the one that can wait a little bit. This Allen York piece for a immediate and say a midterm goal as to where we need to be should be the immediate focus of the consultant. That we need to do that right away. The bigger plan for all of the parks, that can wait a little bit. There's no deadline on that. But this other one is coming up, like we're gonna have to deal with this next year, right? Next summer. So can we change the scope and say that specifically, we're looking for something, you know, an immediate and a midterm goal as to what we can do, quickly.
And how much money will we have in the budget?
Well, budget, certainly what I'd have them do is we need to take the scope as we're talking about it now and compare it to the scope they've already supplied us, see if there's any overlap there that we're already paying for, and then they can put a scope or a fee to that remaining work. We can certainly work with them to prioritize certain items of work ahead of others, so I don't think that would be a problem.
Great.
All right. And Councilmember Fullerton.
And is it possible to have the scope so that this is somebody that they can handle like a water park, a park with water?
Yeah, I believe that after reviewing the proposals that we received back, that this firm could handle everything it is that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, and I'm definitely wanting to talk about having that ballpark 4 be a parking lot. That was part of the short-term solution. So, all right, I'm good.
Okay. Councilmember refinements.
So part of the current Allen York master plan included trailer parking next to the ball fields we're building now. And then those parking stalls are no longer viable, correct? Because that's a wetland?
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's one thing that gives me concern about getting another plan is it looked like we had a good plan. I was under the impression we had a good plan and that there would be those trailer parking over there, and then that plan isn't viable. So part of it would be, I don't know how you write the scope, and I know it's difficult, right? But just we got to consider, I don't know where the engineering judgment is going to come into play to say, where do we draw the line so that we know what they give us back is going to be executable, right? That's my concern, because we have a park master plan that's not executable, and we can't do that again. So I would support the scope change. I just want to make sure, I don't know how we make sure we don't get back another plan that's not executable.
Okay, so the direction we're going with this would be by the end of the week so that we can discuss it as a budget item and a decision card. Everybody get their decision cards to Mr. Johnstone so we can, or to Mr. Vodopich. Or Sherry. Nah, she's not here, right? and we'll go from there. Oh, okay, Madam Clerk, let's move to item E.
This is a discussion on the motion to waive the open recruitment provisions of Resolution Number 2296 to facilitate the internal promotion of an appointed officer of the city.
All right, Mr. Vodopich.
As council is aware, the mayor is allowed to make an interim appointment of appointed officers under the code. Chuck McCune was appointed by the previous mayor as the interim administrative services director / IT manager in November of last year. We're quickly approaching that 1 year time frame. There is a resolution that was passed a number of years ago that says all appointed officers of the city need to go out to advertisement unless a majority of the council waives an external recruitment to facilitate the internal promotion of an employee. After talking to the mayor's desire is to promote Chuck as the interim or as the administrative services director. And so we are asking to waive the advertising requirements of that resolution by a majority vote of the council.
Okay, are we, we do need to have a motion in a second.
Well, actually, this is just for discussion tonight.
Oh, okay.
And then if council is supportive, we'd put it on a future.
All right, any discussion? Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, guys. I think we were all a little taken aback when this first happened. I think me personally, I'm very happy with the results. And these are some big shoes to fill, and you've been doing a great job filling them. And I have no problem moving you forward, but I had to at least double check with the shoes you are filling. And I reached out to Woody this weekend, and he gave me the blessing that you are the man for the job or the person for the job. And if Woody thought that was good enough to replace everything he'd been working on, I fully support this.
Okay, any further discussion? Deputy Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I appreciate all of that as well. I have a couple questions, I guess. And the first one would just be for Chuck. Can you actually do both these jobs at the same time? That seems like a lot. You're wearing a couple of big hats, essentially, doing that. So obviously you feel comfortable doing that. And then the second one is, and I was hoping Sherry would be here, but maybe John can explain this. The recruitment and selection costs for the department director would be, it says $9,000 on here. An outside nationwide executive search would cost up to $45,000. So if we do this, are we paying the $9,000 to do this, or we're waiving the $9,000?
Oh, we'd be waiving the $9,000.
Okay, and that's just a one-time type deal because that was.
Yeah, that would just. I mean, if we were to do an external recruitment,
right,
kind of like a statewide thing, advertising costs, certainly something like that would roughly be about $9,000. If we were to go for a full nationwide recruitment and hire an outside consultant, they're plug numbers, but
yeah.
$40,000 to have somebody to do a nationwide requirement.
Okay, great.
So by facilitating the internal promotion of an existing employee, we don't have those costs.
Okay. I certainly support this at this time. My concern would be right now, I believe this is going to save us approximately $200,000, I think was the number that I'd heard. And my concern is that in the future, if we end up having to backfill, say, a position, we're not saving as much money and that kind of thing. So my concern for the future, essentially, but essentially I'm for it.
Hey, Councilmember Swamin.
Yeah, so there's a couple of totally interesting different issues here in my mind, right? So because the administrative services director or whatever that magical position is, and I call it magical for a reason, right? Because you know how this happened, and I don't know if the city council is very up on the history of the city of Bonnie Lake, right? So when you lose a city clerk, you need to fill that position, obviously, because it's very important. So Woody Evelson came to the city and filled the city clerk position. Okay, right? I don't know who was here then. You were here? No, you weren't even here. So you obviously have somebody who comes here as ultra talented, right? So Woody was placed here to be the city clerk. And if you know, you know. So that came about. Woody is obviously extraordinarily overqualified to be the city clerk. So then you got a problem, right? Because it was my impression he was a city manager, city administrator, city, a very well qualified individual, right? So now you got this ultra well qualified individual sitting in a city clerk's position, and you're like, so okay, now I'm a little bit worried here because I don't want this to go someplace else, right? So you're like, what do I do? The previous mayor and I did not agree about many different things, albeit people think that we did. So you have to magically say, okay, well, wow, ultra talented individual. Why don't we put more duties on this individual? I don't know how many of you looked at how many, administrative services directors there are in cities. That seems to be the thing nowadays, right? There's like all over the place. Because if you put that job description out, you'd probably get a lot of applications. What is our administrative services director? Are they restructuring that position, or is the mayor proposed to restructure that position? The administrative services director is the supervisor of the HR department. That's the way it's written in the code, is my understanding. Is also the supervisor of the senior center department, right? Is that the way it's in code?
That's how it currently exists.
So you would think, and I don't know, I have zero history of what the skills and talents are of the individuals wanting for these spots. How does, it's kind of jumping over the thing, right? Because unless we're convinced as a city council that the administrative services director is a position that you need, I don't understand the structure. I don't frankly understand why the mayor hasn't came forth with the new structure of the city, right? Obviously, it's probably not going to be done because I can see, a deputy city administrator. I can see, a lot of other departments having other help and things like that. But, I don't have that view. I'm a legislative type person, right? I don't know how the city runs on a day-to-day basis. But to keep an old structure that was there for a specific reason, for a specific individual, and move that forward, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, right? So I'm pretty much kind of opposed to that. And then you jump over to the fact that I am a strong believer in an open and accountable and accessible and transparent hiring process in a government organization. I'm like dead set on that. And obviously because that's the reason it exists today. Otherwise we'd be like putting people forth. You come right up against that issue where you have the mayor saying, well, that's the only person I'm going to hire anyways. Doesn't matter if I go out to recruit. I've already made up my mind, right? Well, okay, you can be that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not me. I am not going to support a process that isn't honestly open and accountable and accessible and, all of those fancy words that we like to use nowadays in the process. That's not me. I would, if the position has to exist, be honestly going out there and saying, hey, this is open. Why doesn't everybody apply? The best applicant should, come forth and do that. I'm not going to install somebody in a position because they do a great job, because they're really qualified, because they're internal, or a government open, accountable thing. That's, and that, you can see that because obviously I wrote that resolution for that problem that existed previously. So, I got to stick by my principles.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember
Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Even though Chuck is doing a fantastic job for us there where we need us, I agree with Councilman Swatman that we had a concern before by the prior mayor that he was appointing people and not at least looking out to see what's out there, at least locally. If we're going to do this, we should put out just within the state or John the $6,000 to see what's out there. It's not fair for the city, and it's not right for us to see what is available to us. As a manager in my past, I didn't ever do that. I looked for other stores to go to before I just employed people within my organization. I knew did a good job. What am I missing out on? And this position, it was just created. And I don't know what it really does. We used to have a facilities manager taking care of the senior center, other positions. Now, saying the group know what everyone's doing there. I don't know why this position is essential for them where we can maybe hire somebody at a lower grade to assist in that department to fill in what needs to be done. Some things that Chuck's doing. He's just a good overall guy. If you need him, he's there. And I know that. Always call Chuck. He's always on the dime for me. He's wonderful. But I don't see why we should have this position in the first place. So, but if you think we do, then let's go out for just to open it up for within the state.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding from Councilmember Swatman, Councilmember Watson, that what you're discussing is actually just simply getting rid of the Administrative Services Director as opposed to waiving the R.
Well, you and I have had private conversations, obviously, about structure of the city, and I very much encourage whatever you want to do with the city, and even during the legal discussion with the legal department. That's what I can't understand is why we keep doing things in silos, right? In my mind. Because I think you probably do need a legal department. I think you do need a bunch of other things, but I think you need to put those together so that the council can say, oh, this is the organization that makes sense to run the city going forward.
I see.
And, I don't like it when we, do these things because they're the right thing to do. And they are right because, we have ultra talented individuals that we need to keep within the city. That's the core of the city is our skill set, our talent that we have on staff. Mm-hmm. That's why our city is successful because we are able to maintain and attract and keep these individuals that we have. How you do that, and how that's great because that's what. But I don't like to do things in silos and just say, oh, okay, this makes sense over here. When it's like, well, you've identified the problem with the legal department that you can understand that I can't fully understand, but why isn't it part of a package where it's kind of like, well, if we move these little packages around, it can all fit together. It's like, nice.
Well, thus far, I've had to buy them Kool-Aid every week. That's why they stay.
Right.
But as far as what you're talking about is a point well taken as far as coming up with any sort of redesign. And I plan on discussing that contemporaneously with the budget and seeing what we can do there. Councilmember Fullerton.
So the question is that for me, as a new mayor, you need to reconfigure the city the way that and create the positions that you need in order to make the city work the way that your vision is for the city. So is this a necessary position for your vision? Because I'm thinking like if we're going to redesign the city, then we shouldn't be making a decision on this position yet until we know what the new city is going to look like. And we have all of the positions and what their job description is. And then that can come forward in January or whenever we do the budget, which will be this next couple of months, so that if you have that new city designed, then we can figure out where Chuck needs to be.
Well,
right?
Absolutely.
So,
your timeline is actually quite on point, but I think we're getting a little bit beyond what the actual particular issue is that we're here tonight for, which is essentially to discuss waiving the $9,000 that we would have to put out to do the RFP that is currently required in our code, but the council has the power to be able to waive that,
mm-hmm.
and that's the direction that we're looking for simply tonight.
I would add to that, Mr. Mayor, if I could, though,
mm-hmm.
because there's the demonstration of the reasoning behind that waiving of that in the previous council, because of course you see that. My name was on that. The deputy mayor was for a reason because there's a bunch of council members that said, hey, you need to fix this. So we put it together and did this. Because, Brian Jeter, I think, is a good example of why we had to have that waiver ability in there, right? Because you don't get that kind of local kind of talent. You don't get that local knowledge and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you always need to have that. But maybe with other generic positions, it's kind of like, need to more open. So.
No, I agree with the openness. Absolutely. On that.
Yeah.
However, we're a little fuzzy on what we're doing with this right now. We're discussing it, but do we put it on for an action item?
I guess that's the next, Mr. Mayor. Do we bring this forward for action at a future council meeting?
Right, because again, my contention is, and it's just mine because I'm kind of me, that I would encourage the mayor to come forth with a structure of what the ultimate configuration he'd like to see.
Absolutely.
You know, and do that as part of the budget. So this is how it all fits together.
Mhm.
And whatever we have to do to maintain, you know, the services, like to be able to, do we just extend? Can we just extend Chuck's, like, you know, so he doesn't run up against this kind of issue where he shouldn't be in that position anyways, or some, I don't know, you know, is there some prohibition? Can't we just extend this? Or, I don't know. You know, I don't know your internal
That's a
plans,
good
right?
question for our city attorney, whether that be contractor or deputy at this point, to actually look at with the ordinance that was passed before, as far as the council having the ability to waive the RFP. Does that include them having the power to extend any sort of interim position?
And actually, Mr. Mayor, that is in the code.
Oh, okay.
The initial appointment period is for a duration of 1 year without council approval. It can be extended
Oh, okay.
by a majority vote of the council. So the
I would
council
agree
could
with that, to extend it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if
Hopefully
the,
we get things figured out.
if again, you know, I would encourage the mayor to think about that, right? Because, you know, I like what I hear from you, and I'd like to see you continue to have the ability to, you know, manage and form the city so that it serves the citizens best.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the restructuring that we're talking about is going to be contemporaneous with the budget when we first propose it, because it's a, you know, matter of steps that we do when we get there. But no, the council's not going to vote on a budget that doesn't have any sort of foresight into what the structure is going to be.
Sure. Yeah. Because then it gives you the whole tool set to play with. You can, you know, you have it all in front of you instead of being stuck with, oh, geez, you know, I wish I wouldn't have really, you know, I needed to tweak that, not necessarily not have it. Maybe you tweak it a little, you know, because it's just.
You're going to buy the extra cup of coffee on Saturday while we do this.
Remotely, remember?
Yes.
A virtual meeting.
Council member requirements.
So, how many times has this provision been waived?
3 to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, almost every single time.
Myself,
Chief Jeter,
and Public Services Director Johnstone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been since 2018.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Or 2017. When did you start? Okay, 2018. So 4 years.
If we have a clause we constantly waive, why don't we just repeal it?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's one of those issues where, again, you know, it's there to encourage the hiring authorities to have an open process.
But we have to make
Great principle, but if we keep violating the principle,
Right. Well, and
we
that's
have talent,
right.
right?
That's
Well,
why
it's not
you
violating the principle if you just vote to waive, because the waive is part of it. So it's like part of the procedure. So it's not exactly a violation.
Well, in this way, it's actually being transparent because it's open up to where the public can hear.
Right.
So they can hear what the consideration is, and we can waive it, you know, but at least the public, now that we're having the discussion, public knows that we just waived something or we didn't waive it, right? So it's public knowledge now, right?
Councilmember Evans.
I think I said this when it was Ryan up here, and you said it earlier. This is the mayor's administration. They should be able to put forth whoever they wish, however they wish. It's still up to the council to decide to approve that. Waiver it or not, it's still up to us, because if we say, all right, we're going to approve the waiver, next week we still have to vote on this with Chuck. So if no one is in favor of that, then that's where our voice is heard. But I still think it should be the will of the administration to bring forward whoever and however, and leave it up to the council to decide if that is the person we want to accept.
Well, right, but that's, you know, what Councilmember McClemens is talking about. Then you're talking about not, you know, having an open process. You know, that's where your legislative authority is to say that, yeah, you needed to have an open process. But again, if the administration is going to say no, you know, because the previous mayor was like, no, you know, there's no way I'm going to hire anybody else. So you can tell me to go out and search, and I'll search all day long, but I'm only going to hire X.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and I appreciate your concerns, Councilmember Swam, and I think Councilmember Fullerton had a good point on the fact that it is open and transparent if we publicly waive. And that gives the citizens the right to come in and hear it and comment on it, so they would know what the actual procedure is when it comes down to it, which is why, well, giving opinion is improper, but yeah. Okay. Councilmember Baldwin, I believe, do you have a comment on this? All right, that's a good comment. All right, so let's get it on as an item agenda on Tuesday, next a week from today. Would that be all right with council?
What I think the question would be, what is the
going to
item?
be on the item?
The item
Waive the recruitment?
Right, whether or not to waive the recruitment process in order, 2 months before the interim term expires. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, very good. All right. Next, we have a discussion on council procedures. Deputy Mayor Carter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to abruptly turn it over to Sadie. We've been going through this, as you know, for a little while, kind of trying to make sure that our council procedures are up to snuff, up to date, et cetera. And so I think everybody got in their packet the latest one, right? So, okay. Sadie?
Okay. I have gone over this with Kathleen, so she has seen it, just to be transparent and let you all know. And this is just to go over reminders and to let you guys know what is currently in our code and what the procedures are for meetings and workshops. The first one is we need to make sure that the clerk's office is aware of any event that may have more than 3 council members in attendance at least 24 hours prior, but before 5 o'clock. And for this, so if you guys know of an event that's getting ready to happen that you pretty much possibly know more than 3 council members are going to, if you can, someone could please let the clerk's office know so I can put out a special meeting agenda just in case, because I can't do it last second. So I need to be able to have plenty of notice to get everything ready.
Would that be 3 or 4, Madam Clerk?
It would have to be more than 3.
More than 3.
It has to be the majority.
Yes. Okay. A quorum. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why are you looking at me over here?
Oh, I'm just.
I remember doing it.
You're across
You go
from me.
everywhere, Councilman
You're across from me.
By Bonnie Lake.
That's what we planned.
Next is just in discussions with Carter and the mayor and a couple of council members. We need to start reading our committee packets and asking the chair any questions or ask them to get an answer for you on items that you may have a question on. This will also help from pulling items from the consent agenda. The clerks have changed our agenda and packet procedures in order to help council have more time to read and ask questions before meeting. So please be sure to read your packets, pulling items off the consent to full issues because of not reading the packets and asking questions on items that have been on committee agendas and having advance notice of items. It isn't fair to staff or to other council members when the information was there and it could have been researched a little bit earlier. Clerk's new schedule, just to let you guys know, is the council will receive a projected agenda on Wednesday mornings. So please take a look at it. These are to ensure items are not missing and to see what items are coming up so you can ask questions ahead of time or to let us know if there's something missing that you're aware of. Council will receive the draft agenda for upcoming meetings and workshops on Thursday mornings. So please take a look at it, ensure items are not missing, needing to be pulled from consent, and to see what items are being presented so you can ask questions ahead of time. Thursday afternoon, council will receive the packet. This will give you Friday to read, ask questions, research, the weekend to talk to citizens, Monday and Tuesday to ask questions to get answers before the meeting. We have also discussed with Deputy Carter, we are asking council members to please let the city administrator, city clerk, or department directors know if you could, if you have questions on items and what it may be, for something that is on the agenda, then they can either get the answers or ensure that the correct staff member contacts you back in plenty of time before the meetings. This just helps to enable council members to perform their duties and responsibilities more effectively and timely. Department directors know their staff's caseload and their schedules in order to be able to ensure that the council is going to get a timely response on something, so that we know if it's not going to get to you on time, then we can make arrangements. This goes same for committees. The committee liaison could email council and ask if they have any questions if you're needing them to, and then either have someone call them or be sure to have the chair ask and get answers for you guys. For the call to order, we need to stop going into tangents. Part of our code is that members will debate to the question that's under discussion and not go into tangents that have nothing to do with that item title. So when we have an item, we read the title. If it's not part of that title, then it's going to be a tangent.
How does that work in procedure?
So ultimately, the chair needs to try and keep the council on task so that we're not going off onto tangents on things that are going to be discussed at a later date or whatnot. That's the chair's job.
Well,
kind of keep us on task.
So how does that work?
The way it has been, to where I try and get bumped and bruised, and we I don't know. It'll be a work in progress. We tell you, well, and we we do try to stay on task for it, because Madam Clerk is actually quite correct in that it is, and the fact going on council, in keeping the minutes, it's taking way too many labor hours and effort in a way that the tangents could be discussed in a different forum.
I thought they were going to action minutes or something like that, or?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just add on that all of us have a duty to kind of help that along as well, and we can always bring up a point of order. We can always bring up a motion to deal with that stuff as we go along as well.
Okay.
For roll call, if you guys could please let the city clerk's office know when you're going to be absent or when you're going to be virtual. That helps us for setting up and getting things prepared. We haven't had notification. Just go over that. For agenda.
I've always been told to tell the deputy mayor of that. Do you want that changed?
If you could let him know and just CC us or something, because it's not getting all the way down the line sometimes. And like, I didn't know, Councilmember Baldwin was going to be virtual. So us grabbing her mail and setting up, that's adds steps that's unnecessary. For agenda modifications, when items are being removed from consent to full, ensure that the full issues discussion is about the item that it was pulled and not go off on tangents. Pull items for which you have read all documentations and have asked staff questions to prior. Please don't pull items off and you haven't read any documentation, haven't read your packet or anything, because now we're answering questions that
is
could have had some answers.
Is that a proposed text of a council policy?
It's a mixture of all of our codes.
I'm just saying.
I think it's
within Roberts and Sturgis's rules.
I think it's an encouragement essentially for all of us.
Well, I think we're all adults.
Me too. And I think that sometimes we all just need to be reminded as well. And this is not like something that we're saying we have to do this or that. That's why this is being brought forth as discussion. And it's a whole bunch of stuff just to kind of keep us on track, because as we all know, some of our meetings have gone long, late. Yeah. Those are certainly appropriate to have some of those discussions, and we need to have those. But when we're going off on tangents and we're keeping staff here for no reason, because we haven't done something that's within our own ability to take care of, sometimes we all just need to be reminded to make sure we take care of our business, essentially. So, myself included.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I found the staff have been very helpful when I have questions on Friday and the weekend before I come to council. So anything I have going on, they're very helpful with by either a text message or a phone call. Can you help with this question was coming forward? So I have fewer questions when I come to meetings. So I appreciate that. And that's what we've always done the last 10 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another proposal that we can discuss later and I can make changes to is presentations. Wondering if there should be, if council wants to discuss later, of making like a limitation on some of the presentations. I know we've had some that have drug on way past probably the time that anyone was paying attention. So I don't know if you want to limit it. Some cities do limit their presentations to, so many minutes if someone's presenting from outside of the city on something.
Limit Jason.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
What do the cities do? What do they
Just don't
limit?
use so many words.
They try to limit presentations to being about 5-10 minutes max. We've had some that have gone half an hour longer.
Yeah, don't need that.
For citizen comments, just a reminder that according to our code, discussions are supposed to be to city business or things that the city has authority over. So we have had some comments that have no bearing on city business at all, so we're able to stop them.
Good luck. I think the last person that tried to do that got sued in federal court. Just saying. Pro tip.
Regarding presentations, so I was under the impression that while the council is in the dais and the public is speaking, which to me would include a presentation from an outsider, that we're in receive only mode. So are we going to make a change so that the council can ask a question and say, because currently, if there is a presentation that's going on long, I feel like, well, that's nice, but that's the public's responsibility to communicate to me. It's my responsibility to listen. So we would have to change some rule.
So
right,
council is always able to ask questions if you're wanting to, including during citizen comments. You guys have that right. So what if you guys wanted to limit the presentations and say there's kind of like a time limit, we would add to the code, correct?
So I misunderstood that when I read that section of the handbook that said how we are to behave during public citizen comment and public testimony.
Right, you are in receiving mode, but it does state that if you have a question and the council's in agreement to it, you are able to discuss with that person.
And with, just to add on to that, with if the council has any questions for the person who's commenting and everything, would that extend the 5 minutes out while those questions are being answered?
Yes, because the 5 minutes is just for their comment. So if you guys are asking them questions, then obviously it's going to go past the 5 minutes, but you're asking specific questions.
And Councilmember Baldwin, yes.
I think on the last statement that was said in regards to citizen comments not pertaining to this, that does draw a bit of a red flag for me. I think, I think the last citizen comment that I heard that was indeed a moot point in regards to the city was the man that lived in Tahale, in the middle of Tahale. The one that had some of the complaints about what was going on over there, simply because that was happening in Pierce County, right, and outside of the city's jurisdiction. But I don't know that I've heard any other comment that would have been considered not relevant for a city council to hear their citizens say. And so I think, I don't know, I hear that and it does make me a little apprehensive. Yeah. I don't know how the government can dictate what a citizen is saying unless it is so blatantly not a city issue, right? Like somebody saying, oh, in Tacoma, I'm having problems with my city lights or something. That wouldn't pertain to the city. But I don't know. I don't know. I think that's treading on thin ice.
Hey, well, been sued once.
We have had a gentleman on a record basis talk about things outside the city, including President Biden and other ones that he's brought to our attention and stuff. And I was telling him today he's going to talk about some more things next week. So you have to decide what you want them to comment on, what they can't comment on.
I don't know. I disagree. I think citizens can come in and rant about the president to the council. I'm not saying that's something that we all want to hear and listen to all the time, but I think citizens are allowed to come to their governing body and say those kinds of things.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying we do have one that does all the time. So, and that's fine with me.
And I'm just reminding what our code currently states.
So then in the code, how do we then differentiate what is for the city and what isn't? I think that's a thin line.
And I can change the wording if that's what council wants.
Yeah, we should probably change the wording because according to the Constitution, we got freedom of speech and freedom of redress to our governing body. So they can talk about whatever they want to talk about. We can't tell them what to think and what to say.
Well,
so
our government is based on reason. There's rational basis. There is strict scrutiny. There's all that our Constitution is reviewed by. And I guess the best way to answer Councilmember Baldwin's question on that is that we use reason. You know, what would a common sense citizen think of whether it's city business or not? But to get there, they would have to actually be able to say it. So it's, which is not infringing on any sort of rights because, when it does come down to it, because contrary to what people think, our First Amendment rights do have some limits to them and always have. So it's just a matter of, what they do have to say, and we're going to accommodate what we can in a reasonable fashion. All right, Ms. Parliamentarian, what do you have to say about that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that if any council members wanted to look it up, that under the section of code that talks about this is 2.04.680. And it says that citizens are encouraged to attend and participate at all council meetings. Under agenda item citizen comments, citizens may address the mayor and council regarding any matter relating to city business or over which the city has authority for up to 5 minutes per speaker, unless granted further time by the chair or a majority of the council members present.
Okay. What was that chapter again?
2.04.680.
06 of them.
2.04.680.
Oh, thank you.
We amend that code.
That's
Yeah.
I agree with all of what we're talking about.
Yep.
But at the PCRC level and the PSRC level, their citizen comments are more restrictive to items specifically on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in favor of that. I'm just saying there are some that are more restrictive and specific.
I think that's great if we should enforce it then.
Right. Yeah.
Member Clemens?
Yeah. So we're the local government. We're the closest anybody gets to government. I'm not going to talk to President Biden. I definitely never get a return phone call from Kim Schreier or
Your voicemail's full.
Yeah. There you go.
Maybe it's them returning my call. They don't return my emails either. So I don't know. This is the place where those people can come and they can talk. And I think if somebody's telling me they don't like President Biden, I think what that's telling me is that that person has a political view that they hold, and that we need to make sure we don't do anything in the city that offends that person if we can avoid it. Yeah. Right? I mean, knowing your citizens is part of what the experience is all about, what they're telling you, and that should influence how we govern, which in the case of some of the citizens that I hear, it goes, okay, we don't want fluoride in the water.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I believe we had a citizen who
Oh, yeah.
made that comment
Discussed
just
it
recently.
CDC.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Most practical way is the time limit thing, and that's why we've always had the 5 minutes. We let them, say whatever they want, as long as it's not profane and obscene, whatever it is. It's their 5 minutes to say what they want to say. So it's ultra difficult to say, oh, you shouldn't be talking about that, or that gets really tricky.
Do we spend, how much time do we spend on this? I guess I'd like to see a metric, how much of our time we spend on that particular problem versus other problems.
Exactly.
We only have a few people that come and speak at the meetings anyway, so it's not like citizen comment takes 2 hours, unless we've got like some big issue, and they usually are speaking to the issue that they have a problem with. So
Oh, that's true.
I think it's
No,
fine.
we did.
Just let them say what they want to say for 5 minutes and call it
We're here
good.
till 9 anyway, max. So.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. So my hands are cuffed because of OPMA, right? I can't talk to you guys, right? All together, can't understand what the legislative body thinks, right? And the workshop is the one time that I feel like we can have a candid discussion about these items. And yes, it should be focused on what's on the agenda. So I try not, maybe I go off on rabbit trails. I don't know. But so I think the workshops, they go to 9, right? That's part of my plan, right? Council meetings may be different, right? Because they're more formal and we work through them. But for the workshops, I think we go to 9. And because the council meetings are more structured and they're probably briefer, public comment I think is critical. I mean, especially comments I don't want to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the best. Yep.
Madam Parliamentarian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to throw out an option for council that I have seen other cities do. They have more of a 3-minute limit as opposed to the 5. And when you do have a night, where a whole bunch of people show up, that can help save time on public comment. And council can still, the chair, majority vote of the council members can extend time for an individual, if they see fit.
You guys have already approved that. I have a lot of ordinances to change in code too.
And Councilmember Baldwin.
I just wanted to say also that, I know that there is talk of other, legislative bodies that are restricting, citizen comments and things like that. And even if it's written in our code, it's a very sticky situation. And I know that we went to the conference, and one of the things that they talked about is the ways in which government attempts to limit people's free speech, and they believe that they're within the bounds of what they can do, but actually they can face heavy legislation or heavy court proceedings. And so I don't recommend that we lower people's time or try to restrict what it is that they come before us saying. I don't think that is a good idea at all, to restrict citizens like that.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
The next item is council meetings are becoming more like workshops. According to our code, if possible, it says to only have 1 or 2 major topics defined as issues of high interest, controversial, or those which would take an extraordinary amount of city council meeting time will be scheduled per meeting. We're starting to have our agendas be very long discussions, like 4 in a row on the same night. And we're supposed to try and limit it down to a couple, if possible. So we're trying to not have council meetings be workshops. It's supposed to be more like this, voting, and workshops are to discuss. Needing to stay on subject again. That's a whole different code, same thing. Side conversations and talking over each other makes it hard for us clerks to follow and to do our minutes. And there's sometimes some side conversations between 2 council members, or you're talking over each other. And then we have problems trying to do our minutes. Open discussion. I'm gonna have to explain this one. This isn't the time to discuss an item that's already on the agenda for discussion. So if we have it on the agenda as a discussion item, we shouldn't be talking in length during open discussion and like almost coming to decision during open discussion when it's actually a discussion item further down. We've done that a couple of times where we, instead of, having open discussion on something that's not on the agenda, we're actually doing it with stuff that's already on the agenda for discussion. So it's coming out of order of the agenda.
I don't understand where you're going with some of this. Isn't this like, the deputy mayor's kind of prerogative, or, it's yours to run. It's yours to kind of guide us, the council, right? We appointed you to be the deputy mayor and kind of guide us through to keep us on task, right?
Right.
So
some of this is just, I think, this is going through the code and making sure this is updated.
Yeah, but there shouldn't be a code that says I shall not discuss or talk over somebody else, right?
Well, that's I think was it Sturgis or whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't talk over each other. A discussion.
Yeah.
The chair gives the floor to one person.
Yep.
They discuss the item,
right,
and then the chair gives the floor to somebody else to discuss the item.
And
Sometimes when we have discussions and it goes back and forth, it's more like us just talking out in the parking lot, which sometimes is reasonable and sometimes it's not. And obviously it makes it difficult for minutes to be had. All right.
Because the workshops need to be kind of flowy and
correct,
interruptive.
Yes.
Workshops are kind of the beanbag chair kind of scenario.
Right. Right.
As opposed to the council meeting, which is much more.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
that isn't true. But, from the open and transparency part of it, the citizens have a right to be able to know what we discussed at the workshops as well. And if we're having side comments and talking over one another, as Madam Clerk has stated, it's very hard for them to keep minutes. And
Definitely.
so if you're reading a whole bunch of transcripts that have unintelligible on
Yeah. And that's why I thought they were talking about one time to go into these action-oriented minutes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to capture so much of because the public is welcome. It's open public. Public can be here all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what we discussed.
We can hear everything, so we sometimes have to watch that recording several times.
Well, and I don't know if we're
what's
gonna.
happening.
Is there an actual suggestion to get to more of a reasonable minute-taking scenario? Because I'm not supportive of like of a verbatim transcript of a council workshop.
No, I haven't heard anything like that. I think this is just, again, more of a discussion item for all of us.
Is this long discussion that we've had for whatever 10 or 20 minutes or something like that should be composed of, council discuss council policies and procedures?
Yeah, it could be very short. Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of what we're doing. But when we're trying to capture your guys' issues and we bullet point them, it's hard to capture them when I have people having side conversations that I also can hear at the same time. So we're having trouble doing our minutes and even doing the quick action ones when there's more than one conversation going on.
Yeah, tricky.
Only two more things. Every time we do action at a workshop, we need to have council discussion, citizen comments before the action. So if we can try and help it, try and obviously limit the actions being done at workshops like Councilmember McClymans had brought up earlier. Most items should go to a committee first, then workshop, then meeting for action. If at workshop, the item is not ready for action, then decide if it needs to go back to committee again or a workshop. And that is in our code instead of going, sometimes it goes from committee to workshop, meeting, workshop, meeting, workshop, meeting. If we're not ready for, a decision, we have to decide if it needs to go to a workshop again or a committee again.
I only have one question, Madam. On the, say the item that we had on tonight as an action item, it wasn't originally scheduled to be an action item, was it? Or if it was, how much notice is how long of a notice is our public given for them to come in and make citizen comments? Because we have yet, in my administration, to have citizen comments in a workshop.
Same as you guys. It comes out on the agenda the same time you guys get yours.
Okay.
And sometimes, usually, we try to keep the action items at workshops to be things that are time sensitive. But we have done some that probably could have waited.
Okay.
And the last thing is we're still having issues figuring out the vote counts when it is not unanimously. So we need to be louder and face forward, please, and not do your vote like this.
I can't hear you.
And,
So what
and
you
the,
say?
They've got little
yeah.
lights, it's a little like they have in Washington D.C.
And hopefully
red, green, and then for
Mr. Mayor,
Swatman be yellow.
yellow and all the time.
Mr. Mayor, we used to have that in the old
Yeah, we did.
building.
Yeah, we
Oh,
lost
okay.
that. Yeah,
It didn't come along with us.
But the chair should the chair should always make sure that's obvious, right?
Right.
The chair should, motion carries, motion whatever,
Absolutely.
do that.
And the chair is supposed to announce with, how many nays and how many
Oh, there you go.
yeas,
Yeah.
actually.
Whatever works. Yeah.
Yes.
So however they want.
When
to
that's
do it.
not announced, then obviously we're trying to guess.
Well, but the chair makes the call.
Yeah.
The chair is the chair, and then mayor most of the time.
And that's it of my reminding.
No, I had a question, Noah, because I think we had a good suggestion that we kind of battled around last time about because there's the Sturgis and then the other one, the more modern one. It appears that Sturgis has changed over a period of time. Back in the ancient times when I wrote this code, they've came up with the newer version that you guys.
Yeah, Roberts was written back in the 19th century. Sturgis is the one that's kind of streamlined it into modern.
And one, and then there's a newer version of Roberts or something that's a streamlined.
Hopefully by the end of the week,
Oh.
I will be able to give you guys a spreadsheet that shows the differences.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that in our code, we are doing a mixture of
Right.
Sturgis and
Yeah.
Roberts.
Well, because Sturgis even has changed to American Code of Parliamentary, whatever it is, they kind of, so yeah, exactly.
And Councilmember Fullerton.
I believe that a lot of the cities are using an abbreviated Robert's Rules of Order, so that's kind of what I was talking about when
Rob's
I
rules.
was bringing it up.
Right.
Yeah, Rob's
Yeah.
rules.
Rob's.
But it's
suggestions.
obviously we're not going to need 2,000 pages worth of Robert's Rules, and only an extremely versed, probably years and years of practice, Robert's Rules would be able to handle that. But
That's why I'm doing a comparison. So then we can
Appreciate
have a
your
discussion. You can
work
tell me
on
which
that.
one you want to follow, and then I can fix the code accordingly.
That'd be great.
thank you,
And,
Sadie.
And certainly appreciate the comparative notes that you'll be giving later on.
I believe our committees are. The other one, the
Workshop.
commissions are all on Roberts.
Oh, are they?
Are they?
Well, you might have to.
Our code says,
Like I said, there's a multiple versions. However they do that, kind of settle.
Okay. All right. Well,
Mayor, Deputy
yes.
Mayor.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Carter.
I just wanted to thank you, Sadie, for your work on this. Thank you to everyone who's put in for it. And thank you for the discussion in regards to it. It's great to get more eyes on it before we move forward. So thank you, everyone.
And yes, Councilmember, you had another comment?
Oh, no, I was just saying that Deputy Mayor had his hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Guy with the green shirt.
Well, on that note, I believe we have no more business, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Guy shirts.